stop your mistakes. By now, you should know you should draw in ink. Okay? Please don't use your famous baby blue pen. Okay? It really drives us nuts when we see that very awful baby blue pen. To you it looks nice, no? To us it's very awful. Okay? So when we draw the IBC, the axis is not income. The axis is future consumption, current consumption. Try not to put C1, C2. It's very messy. Then you have a lot of C1, C2. Okay? Optimization, first of all, says you must have wealth. That's why your wealth is represented in the IBC. Okay? Now mark out, first of all, your Y1, Y2. So this is your wealth first. Draw all this in ink. Draw confidently, half a page in ink. Second thing to note, if you can, don't write any answer beside the diagram. It's very messy. Because sometimes you cancel the diagram, we don't know whether you cancel the answer. So don't. Thirdly, please don't blanco diagram. Do you know when you blanco, when the time it reach UK, your blanco come out already. Alright? So don't blanco. If you make mistake, cancel the entire diagram. Don't blanco, don't cancel the line. Redraw. Okay, right? So in this case, look at your assumption, right? You assume Y1 is C1 first. Therefore, you have no savings. The next period, you earn Y2 and you must spend it all because the model says you only live 2 periods and you don't have requests. You must spend all your time. Because this is your C1, C2 that gives you satisfaction, then you draw in the indifference term. Okay, this is called optimization. Alright, so with this discussion, let's look at the question that we want to discuss. There was a decrease in Y1. Okay, so we mark up the points. Now, all the subsequent points you can do in pencil, so that if you make mistake, you can see. Okay, so I encourage you to draw in pen for the main diagram. Subsequent diagram draw in pencil, it's fine. Okay, right? You will actually feel accepted. But if you draw the entire thing in pencil, you can refuse because your examiner's guideline says all answers must be in ink. It includes diagram. Okay, but usually we will mark. But if the whole diagram is in pencil, it's a little bit risky. Okay, so of course, finish off this first. Okay, so this is our analysis. So I'm still writing in short form, but make sure we go home, we practice writing in paragraph. There was a drop in Y1. Okay, remember, there must be assumption. Y2 must be unchanged. And there must be another assumption, interest rates is unchanged. And that tells you your IBC will shift parallel to the left. Right? You must check all your answers as assumptions. You cannot hurriedly answer the question. Okay, so we shift IBC leftwards or inwards in a parallel manner. Okay, to get our point B. Okay, but you have not applied Fisher's approach at all. Okay, so step 2 is therefore total wealth drop. Look at this whole chunk here. This whole chunk is the equation on the right, Y1, Y2, and 1 plus R. So your Y1 drop, total wealth drop. And therefore, Fisher says total consumption drops. Now look at here. If I didn't quote the IBC equation, I won't die on. But I quote the behavior, wealth and consumption. And therefore, we plan for smooth consumption. C1 and C2 both must drop. Right? So imagine you finish this, time's up. You didn't draw, you pass the question. You pass and you get marks. Because you have skill sets, you have the diagram, you have your analysis. behavior is more important than the complete perfect diagram. If you have no time to draw the basic one will do. Alright, so don't get obsessed with the diagram. Make sure you are very obsessed with assumptions, behavior. They must exist. Imagine in the exam, you only have this answer. How on earth he knows what you want to say? You don't understand one. Okay, so with that, let's look at the answer. Look at it. C1 and C2 will drop. So put an arrow there first. It's very clear. If C1 and C2 will drop, this portion of the IBC is invalid. There's no way you happily go and draw a indifference curve because it looks nice, because it's neat. There's no way you draw it what, if you have concepts. And therefore, the point, okay, just pick arbitrary, right? So it must be between B to this point, right? Right? So you pick somewhere in the middle, let's say here. So this is your C1 prime, your C2 prime. So this is your point E. Then you draw the indifference curve inside. You compare this diagram with the diagram in the slide. They look exactly the same. The IBC and the indifference curve both shift left. But the answer is different. That's what I meant. This is the topic that at one glance, you thought your answer is correct. But you can end up walking out exam hall getting 0, still do not know. Right? So your concept must be very important. Okay, so in this case, C1 and C2 drop. But a good exam answer is not one just say C1 and C2 drop, but highlight. Okay, therefore C1 prime is now greater than Y1 prime. Okay, it means borrowing occurs. Further establish your answer. Okay, and assume. Okay. There is no borrowing constraint. So you must be at this stage now to polish your answer already. At every stage. You do not say in conclusion. Never in my answer I say conclusion. Right? It's always polishing the answer. So the outcome is household spend more, he needs to borrow. But you must highlight, right? He gets to borrow. If he can't get to borrow, there's no C1 prime. Okay, then of course C2 prime, according to your diagram, was lesser than Y2 because you need to repay that. So from zero savings, you became a borrower, assuming borrowing can take place. And that's why your diagram will reflect you can't spend the unchanged income. Alright, look at this answer and the diagram on the slide. It was different. The answer is actually different. Okay, right? Behavior of Fisherian's approach must be clearly and accurately actually explained. Okay, so that was the discussion on income. Now moving on to the next slide. I couldn't toggle. The next discussion was on savings. Whenever you discuss savings, you rewrite the equation. I can't toggle. Okay, so we got the slide. So whenever you want to discuss savings, so copy it in your slide. You rewrite the function this manner. It's the same equation, but you rewrite IBC this way because you want to look at the role of interest rate on the slope of IBC. So when you discuss interest rates, you must assume Y1, Y2 unchanged. That's why the IBC must pivot. Okay, so draw in the diagram. Okay, same thing, of course, put in your basic pointers. So if you talk about interest rate, then you assume borrower and saver. Okay? 90% of the time in the exam paper is asking about saver. Because the savers in fact has two contrast outcomes. Okay, so in this case, you assume a saver first. The meaning of saver means C1 is less than Y1. That's why C2 can be more than Y2. Okay, so mark out your points. C1, so all the way up. Then you draw the IBC. Oh, sorry, the IC, should I say. You start at point A. This is your income endowment. Again, you could see, I draw IBC with income. But based on the assumption of the person, then I look at consumption point to draw indifference curve. Okay, now you think this is very trivial. You know why I mentioned this point? Because some of you like to do this. Okay, some of you like to do this. Some of you in the exam like to draw indifference curve first, then take the ruler to go and intercept it. There's no concept, when you start doing this, you lost concept already. You only want to draw a perfect diagram. You shouldn't. You should let your concept dictate the diagram, not opposite. So if you can't draw nice diagram, practice. But practice with concept in mind, not practice to look nice. It's not. Okay, so come back to here. So in this case, we discuss example, interest rate goes up. Again, look at your assumption, right? Assume Y1 constant, Y2 constant. Okay, so in this case, you can see with the same income, right? 1 plus R goes up. IBC must be steeper, but must be containing Y1, Y2 at point E1. That's what I meant. It actually pivots. It doesn't have a parallel shift. You realize your assumption will guide your diagram. It's not the diagram giving the answer, it's your analysis that gives you the answer. Okay, so with that, draw it in. And then from here onwards, you can draw in pencil already. In case you make mistakes, then you don't waste time drawing basic diagram. Okay, so this is your IBC 1. Think about the logic. What if you don't have an equation? How do you know the IBC looks this way? If interest rate goes up and you are saving, you get more wealth in the future. The IBC, you see the intercept is higher. It's logical. Right? So don't let the diagram dictate your answer. Your logic, your economic behavior dictate the diagram. So this answer, pivot at E1 steeper, is logical. Okay? But where do you draw the IBC? Now, every time when we draw a steeper IBC, it's okay if it cuts the original indifference curve. It's okay one. Don't freak out. Right? Okay, just leave it. Then analyze. Okay, so in this case, I write one more time. As given in your slide, analyze substitution effect and income effect in words. Don't need to draw the diagram. Where is it? What's the meaning of substitution effect? Interest rate goes up, you are attracted to save more. Right? Interest rate is the opportunity cost. You are attracted to it. You save more, therefore C1 will drop. You save more, so that future you get to enjoy it. This is substitution effect in words. Okay? Income effect is always very tricky. Income effect is looking at your wealth. Look at your equation. This is your wealth. Remember the IBC has Y1, Y2, 1 plus R on the right. Your wealth went up. What do you do to your wealth? Split it between C1 and C2. So in the exam, I know you are very scared of income effect. Just write it out. Okay? And then make an assumption. Assume. Okay? Ask E more than YE. This is a valid assumption. But of course, if you plan to do this topic to score well for section B, try out the 2013 paper. The 2013 paper starts to ask you what if income effect is stronger. Okay, but these are for those who want to get the A and B grade, you're going to do the 2013 paper. But for those of you who really want to get 13 marks on this topic, Johnny explained SE is still stronger than YE. It's very logical because income in fact is very small. Interest rate increase, you probably earn $50 more, then you spend 25. You tell yourself, might as well take the money and save more. It's a very logical behavior. So SE more than YE, and therefore C1 goes down, C2 goes up. Okay, then go to the diagram, mark up the points. I'm going to demonstrate to show you. Okay, so once you're ready, go to the diagram. So this indifference curve is always very distracting. But just ignore it, you're not using it. You just need to mark up right on the diagram. So mine is quite steep. Okay, so I have my C1 drop because I need to have stronger substitution effect. Okay, and then of course my C2 goes up. Now, see what I do. Okay, I mark up the point. Let's call this point 2. If I don't dare to draw, I just say there's an indifference curve there. Then don't draw. Just say there's an indifference curve at point B, which is higher than IC1. You see? So sometimes you seek for perfection, but for the wrong thing. Right? The diagram is just a tool. Okay? So in this case, I would say optimization at point B, where indifference curve is higher. So I didn't draw, I just say point B. And I highlight welfare. You are better off. Okay? You are actually better off. But go back and try the 2013 paper. The 2013 paper says what happens, you turn from a saver to a borrower. It's a very difficult, a tricky question. When I see next lecture, I will do it with you. But you can start working on it. But for those who want to get 13 to 14 marks, this is the minimum you must know how to do. Okay, right? For the case of the saver, then of course, sometimes you also discuss borrower. Borrower don't have income effect. You borrow means you are poor. It's just matter of poor or poorer or poorest. It's still poor. Where got income effect? Income effect is wealth. So there is no income effect for borrower, just need to discuss substitution effect. Okay? And if you are discussing borrower, you need a new diagram. Please, don't save time and draw borrower inside. It's very messy. People understand. Draw a new set. Don't share diagram for borrower and saver. Okay, so that's consumption question. The next slide. Okay, I can't show you the slide because it's not working. But we go on to your next slide. It also tests on REP. So I leave it to you to read that segment. But REP usually come up for part C, and it gets quite difficult nowadays. Right? So don't be discouraged if you cannot do part C. If you can discuss the basic REP, it's good enough. Okay? Next, investment theories. Now, please, nobody can come and tell me I'm preparing investment theory for section B. There's no question on it at all. 20 marks. Right? So it definitely comes up from section A, but I shouldn't say definitely. Most of the time it comes up